Every day I see us winning the culture war. More and more, news is starting to break and the veil is being lifted. The mask is slipping and the woke left is being exposed for what it really is. Several years ago, we learned about the Women's March. The organizers were deeply anti-Semitic. Now, I am not a free speech absolutist. I do not believe that people can just say absolutely anything. But I do believe greatly in the general concept of free speech, and to explain as we get into the story. What I mean is, if you're instructing someone on how to commit a crime, you are party to that crime. So I do think there are certain limits. There are many people who believe that you can say anything you want because you didn't do anything wrong, even instructing someone how to commit a crime. I'm not sure I fall in that camp. Now, that being said, when it comes to the issues that we're seeing at Harvard, UPenn, and MIT, where Elise Stefanik, Republican, asked these representatives at these universities if calling for the genocide of Jews warranted bullying and harassment. My view is individuals should be allowed to express their opinions, no matter how awful they are. Opinions are different from calls to direct action. So again, not a free speech absolutist. However, we are not talking about the right of a student to express an idea. We're talking about whether universities uphold their standards in applying hate speech rules. That is to say, I actually agree with the Harvard, UPenn, and MIT residents on their stance on calling for the genocide of Jews. I think it's important. I think it's evil. And I think anybody calling for genocide is bad. And that's why I want these individuals to expose themselves. Now, hold on. We got a lot to break down. The story is, the other day, the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and the University of Pennsylvania appeared before the House Education Committee to discuss anti-Semitism. This, I think, is one of the most important stories as it exposes the absolute hypocrisy of the woke left. Now, if someone were to come to me, or if I were to see someone on the street or on a campus, and they expressed such a disgusting view about killing anybody, I'd say, I'm glad they let me know so I can avoid them and work against them. Because these people are bad for the entirety of human civilization. Silencing them, I don't think helps us. So when we go back to the social media arguments and censorship, my attitude's always been, if you tell these people to hide their views, they will, and they will empower themselves in secret. Censoring people does not make the idea go away. It only makes sure that you don't know where it's occurring. However, the woke left made the argument that they should be able to censor anyone. And this brings us to this story and what I view as a major strike into the heart of the hypocrisy of wokeness. When it comes to Jewish people, those who claim to oppose hate speech, those who claim to support diversity, equity, and inclusion, outright defend their activists calling for the genocide of the Jewish people. And I mean, look, these quotes are wild when asked this question. So again, I will say it as such. If these people at these universities were actually classical or traditional liberals who believed in free speech, and, you know, like you were to come to me and said, do you think that these things, I want to play the clip for you so you can really see this, because it is shocking and amazing. But if someone came to me and said, Tim, if someone called for the genocide of a group of people, is that bullying or harassment? My response would be, are they standing on a soapbox and just saying it? Or are they going up to the person and yelling that they should be genocided, right? Because that's the difference. Someone expressing an abhorrent view is different from targeting an individual. I think that should be stated. And that being said, and there's questions about what the limit is on harassment, because I do believe harassment is different from free speech. That is, if you walk up to someone, stand within a few feet of them and start screaming at the top of your lungs your ideas, and you follow them around saying these things over and over again, I don't know at what point, like, that's not really free speech. You're not expressing yourself. You're just kind of harassing an individual. You get the point. But here we have this story. Billionaire Bill Ackman demands resignations of Harvard, UPenn, and MIT presidents after all three refuse to say if calling for the genocide of Jews is harassment. Now, here's why this is important. This is we have this story from City Journal. Harvard's double standard on free speech. They say, in this year's FIRE report, Harvard's speech climate didn't merely rank dead last among those of the participating colleges. It was also the first school that FIRE has given an abysmal rating for its free speech climate, scoring it 0 on the 100-point scale. That dismal distinction made headlines last month across the United States, Europe, and the Middle East and Asia, but not on the Harvard campus. The Crimson didn't even publish an article in the news section, much less an editorial. You see, here's what's happening. Harvard, these other universities, they will silence the moderate opinions of, say, conservatives. They will ban people from speaking. They will shut you down. And then when it comes to people attacking, quite literally, someone for being Jewish, they say it's context dependent. And that's the point. This exposes the hypocrisy. They don't care about protecting people from hate speech. They hate Jews. I mean, look, man, there are a lot of people who hate Jews. Seriously, anti-Semitism exists. I got to play you this clip. You got to listen to exactly how they break it down, because some of these are rather shocking. And that being said, I'll stress this video in an isolated context. You have these administrators saying, well, look, we don't like people saying this, but it's not harassment if they're just saying it. And I'd be like, okay, I mean, it's abhorrent. It's disgusting. But I get what you're saying in terms of free speech. However, the problem is these people don't hold these views universally. And that's how you know. I just got to say, man, I think they hate Jews. It seems kind of a cliche and like a trope to say, because accusations of anti-Semitism get thrown all around. But dude, I am done with this. The far left marching around, chanting slogans and supporting Hamas. And then you have these universities, which we know for a fact ban speech, allow this speech. They are evil and they overlap with Nazis to such a great degree. And again, I know Godwin's law. Oh no, we're comparing. Dude, they're fascistic. They say they believe there's no truth but power. They want to impose their will through authoritarian means. I love this. I was reading an academic article on how Nazi Germany was socialist when it wasn't actually socialist, because people on the right will say, oh, the Nazis, they were actually the socialist party. And the left says they weren't left, they were far right. So I read an academic paper about the economics of Nazi Germany, and guess what they used to enforce their economic plan? Cancel culture. That's it. What would happen is if you were a steel mill and you wanted to produce steel for cars or something, you would get people coming to you being like, hey, man, I heard that you're not helping the war effort. Like, what's wrong? And then they would ostracize you, shun you, and cancel you. Nobody would want to work with you. Nobody would want to buy your product. You'd be forced to bend the knee and produce the product they wanted you to produce. Kind of like what we see with DEI movies. Take a look at Snow White. Snow White was going to be remade into a live action. Then Peter Dinklage says, how backwards and offensive that you would have dwarves in a movie. So they release a photo of Snow White and the Seven Companions, a diverse cast of people, and they got roasted for it. But that's it, using social pressures to force businesses to align with your ideology. This is what we have now. I want to show you this video. It's very important. Let's roll tape. Let's roll tape properly, I should say.
Calling for the genocide of Jews. Dr. Kornbluth, yes. At MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
Yo, please help me here. Can I just play back what she said? Please listen to these words.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
Please share this with people. Dude, you want to criticize Israel, please go ahead and do so. Seriously, I don't care. It's a government, whatever. You want to criticize their military actions, please go ahead and do so. You want to criticize Hamas, I think they're evil. I think there's a big difference between Hamas and Israel. I think Israel has military actions worthy of criticism. I think Hamas is evil. And that's just me. And I got to tell you, I'm not here to fight with you about Israel, Palestine, or any of that stuff. But my point is this. The context, it could be anti-Semitic. Lady, She's saying that there are instances in which someone will call for the eradication of the Jewish people and it might not be anti-Semitic. What? Yo, it's all breaking down, isn't it?
Which can be anti-Semitic depending on the campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
That I have no words, my friends. This is the greatest admission we've seen from the woke machine, from the universities. She's outright saying that someone might call for the elimination of the Jewish people and it might not be anti-Semitic. I'm like, I don't know what could be more anti-Semitic than that.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules.
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
Okay, so listen, I agree. If someone stands on a soapbox and says nasty, awful things, we say, well, that person's nasty and awful. Thank you for letting me know. If a person goes up to an individual and keeps saying it over and over again and repeatedly does it over a period of time, whatever that time period may be, then you're harassing a person. That I totally agree with. But let me just point out right now, what do you think would happen if Elise Stefanik said, would calling for the genocide of black people constitute harassment? They would say, in no uncertain terms, instantly, it is. No question.
The answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
Wow.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's targeted at Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric.
And is it anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So here's a university which has been given an abysmal rating. They don't believe in free speech. They shut down speech. It is well known and widely reported. But the moment someone asks them about the Jews, all of a sudden they're free speech warriors. Absolutely incredible. I'll stand by my positions on free speech. I'm not a free speech absolutist. I do believe, a lot of people don't understand this. They believe that you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can. And a lot of people also believe that free speech absolutism, there are people who claim that I'm a free speech absolutist because they think when I say something like, you shouldn't be able to incite immediate acts of violence or instruct people to commit crimes. I think those are components of the crimes themselves. They say, you're a free speech absolutist. And I'm like, no, there are people who are free speech absolutists who believe you are allowed to instruct someone on how to commit a crime, and you are not part of the crime because you took no action within that. I don't like that game. If someone's at a planning meeting saying like, here's how you do all these things, see you later, they're a component of the crime. But all I did was speak. You helped coordinate a conspiracy to commit a crime. Come on. So if I'm looking at, say, like deep state agents, all they're doing is talking to each other, and then someone carries out the action. No, they're all party to the actions that took place. They were part of it. They were part of the planning phase. Planning is part of a crime. Here's the issue, okay? And I think it's plainly obvious. There are people right now. There's a tweet, I think I retweeted, where some guy was like, look at all the free speech absolutists immediately trying to ban speech. I am for censorship. You betcha. I'm absolutely for censorship. I don't think kids should look at naughty words and adult content. I don't think people should be advocating for, not advocating for, I don't think people should be instructing on how to commit crimes or instructing people to commit crimes. These things all cross a line. So when it comes to, say, Twitter, for instance, I do think it's fair to say that if you target someone with sharp invective, then the platform can in some way take action against you. I am not this absolutist. The issue when it comes to political censorship is first, is it fair and balanced? Second, is it effective? And when it comes to fair and balanced, it's do we agree on where those lines are? If we do not, then there is no line. If the left says misgendering is offensive and the right says, no, it's not, you don't get to arbitrarily decide if you're offended. That line is now drawn based on your whims. So that creates a broad stroke, meaning you can say a lot of things. You can argue, I don't think it's offensive to say this slur. The issue, most conservatives and most liberals would agree on certain things that cross the line into targeting someone with harassment. And it's not just calling them a name. It's typically, well, I shouldn't say the left. I think the fair assessment is a repeated action taken against someone on social media using extreme rhetoric or instructing violence or something like that. Then you can be like, hey, look, man, you're crossing the line into illegal territory. I think the reason why I'm not outright saying just criminal activity, like a lot of people might say, is that I believe civil tort violations or civil action can result in someone. I do believe it's fair for Elon Musk to be like, hey, we're suspending you because of a civil complaint, not a criminal complaint, which means harassment can be criminal, in which case you could actually be told to take down certain speech if you're actually legally harassing someone. That's going to be up for a court to decide. I am not an absolutist. When I say I'm for censorship, I'm talking about adult content on platforms where children have access to it that shouldn't be allowed, that should be censored. People instructing and advising on committing crimes and acts of extremism, things like that, I don't think should be allowed. Now, if someone goes onto Twitter and advocates for the genocide of any group of people, I have no problem saying outright that should be allowed. 100%. Any group of people. And I'll just use me, for instance. If somebody started espousing hate speech towards mixed race people, I don't care. All that happens is I know you've said it and I don't like you. That's it. I will avoid you. I know your views. Let's have a nice day. You go do your thing and I'll make sure that I don't support things you're involved in. I think shining a light on this speech is the most important way to combat it. Why? Most people do not like when someone calls for genocide. So I want to make sure when I'm advocating, you don't vote for someone. Do not support this person's political positions. They say, why? Here's a video of them stating they want genocide over target group. I don't care if it's a white person, a black person, a Jewish person. And you know what most people are going to say is, yeah, we don't like that. And that person's going to lose political influence. The last thing we want is for them to hide. Now, Bill Ackman is getting praised quite a bit because he's not just talking about Jews. He's actually calling them out for their anti-white sentiment as well, which is also very important. If someone wants to speak their disgusting opinions, let them speak their disgusting opinions. Why? Well, everybody hates everybody else's opinions. Calling for killing a group of people is insane. But if it's not an immediate call to action or a threat, it's an opinion on what you think should happen, then all you've done is expose yourself as a bad person we should avoid and make sure you don't get power. Imagine you had a presidential candidate scared to express their opinion, so they hid this. And then the person gets elected and it wields that power in a bad way. This is why it's actually good that someone expresses their opinions without fear so we can know who the bad people are. That being said, there are a lot of smart people who understand calling for the genocide of Jews will result in you losing basically all of your friends. You might find a certain pocket of people on the left and the right who are going to stand with you, maybe these Harvard educators, but most people are going to avoid you like the plague. This is where we're currently at with wokeness. I couldn't believe it when I saw this video. The woman in the beginning actually saying that there is a context in which calling for the genocide of Jews may not be anti-Semitic. She's not talking about Israel. She's not saying calling for sanctions against the Israeli government. She actually said there could be students calling for genocide and it doesn't even constitute anti-Semitism. Look, man, I think it's bad when the left targets white people. I think it's bad when they target Jewish people. I think it's bad when they target Latinos or black people. I don't care. I can't stand racism. I really, really can't. I can't stand these people. And, you know, racism, I mean a prejudice against someone based on their race. By all means, if you want to look at nationwide data based on race, I don't care. If you want to cite statistics, that's fine. Stats are real. If you want to talk about the differences between different groups of people based on race, these things actually matter. Sickle cell anemia, for instance, is more prominent among the black population. But if you try to win political arguments by telling me I should hate someone or take action against them solely because of their race, you are wrong and you lose. There is no circumstance where I, as a traditional liberal, classically liberal-leaning individual, am going to condemn an individual who did nothing simply because of who they are, their race. I don't care if you're LGBTQIA2 plus whatever. You can love who you want to love. You can live how you want to live. But if you start targeting children, we've got a problem. If you are a black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever, I don't care. People can come to me and talk about crime statistics, and I'll be like, dude, there's no circumstance where I'm going to meet a Mexican guy, an Asian guy, or a black guy and assume something about him based on national level statistics. It doesn't help me learn anything about him. I had this conversation with someone recently, and I said this, listen, people talk about white privilege, all right? Let's talk about white privilege. Let's say you go to a job interview, and you want to get a job at a bank, and you show up wearing a Dago tee and baggy jeans and sneakers. And you walk in with a back and you got a sideways cap and you're like, yo, what's up, dude? Like, I think I could work your bank pretty good, man. They're going to be like, I don't know if this is the right job for you, right? The people in the banks, they wear suits. Now, what happens if a black or Hispanic man walk in wearing a nice suit, walk right up to the owner and say, nice to meet you. I'm here for the job interview. I think this is a wonderful establishment and thank you for your time. You don't have to talk like some white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You could be a Latino guy and you walk in wearing a nice suit and you shake their hand and say, you know, even if English is your second language, thank you for letting me come. I'm going to work very hard. And they're going to say, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, do you speak Spanish? You say, yes. I'm like, that's excellent. Thank you so much. It's not about race. It's not about language. It's about, are you here to work with us? Are you going to be a good worker? Are you going to be able to help and cooperate and be part of a team? These things matter. And culture matters. So when that guy walks in slouching, wearing street clothes, more, urban style, it doesn't matter what your race is. It matters that they're going to say, listen, the customers that we have here, they're not going to be this. And you know what? It might even be discriminatory to a certain degree because they could be like, well, hey, look, this may, being a banker may not be the job for you, but if you're a nice guy and you can work well in a team, it doesn't matter what clothes you have. We can find work for you, but maybe this position isn't right for you. My point ultimately is it's almost never about race. Never. And they always want to make it about race. It's almost always about, do you fit in with the culture that you are trying to join? And there are a lot of people that claim it's all about race. The left will argue that cultural roots are racial and it's all intermingled and all that stuff. Listen, man, it's not race. It's your ideas, it's your behavior, it's your mannerisms. And if you want to argue that people shouldn't discriminate based on those things, fine. But that's cultural discrimination, not race-based. Anyway, look, this is why I can't stand the left. This is why I think this story is so important. It shows exactly who they are. When they say you're being hypocrites because you're supposed to defend free speech, but now all of a sudden you're getting mad about the Jews, that says a whole lot, doesn't it? There's actually a tweet, I retweeted, where a guy's like, look at all the free speech warriors all of a sudden angry that college students are calling for the genocide of Jews and they want to censor it. And I'm like, listen, man, That's not the defense you think it is. It's showing that your tolerance for hate speech stops with the Jewish people. It exposes you as a hypocrite. They don't care about racism or anti-Semitism. They use those as cudgels to steal power. Me? I deeply care about these things, and I want them to stop. And there is an accurate and correct way to deal with it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.